suit. Um, yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's that. It is kind of neat that this is the first game where, like it's sort of kind of a funny element of the Metroid games that Samus keeps encountering the power-ups for the Chozo battle suit wherever she goes. And I mean, to some extent, like, it was sort of just the sort of evolution of the story of Samus's suit and the technology that power. I don't need to fight you guys. But what I can do is I can get some light beam ammo back. Um, because like the Chozo weren't actually a thing until Super Metroid. And I'm talking about the game here. You know what? I'm not going to discuss the manga at all. As far as I'm concerned, manga not in my canon. Okay, I feel it did some unnecessary things with the whole Samus story. Anyway, I guess we could talk about that too. But so the Chozo weren't a thing in the original game. There were mysterious statues scattered throughout planet Zebes that had power-ups for you, but they were only ever referred, I think they were referred to in the manual as artifactor statues, and they were referred to as the relics of an ancient civilization that nobody remembers. The other thing that's important to note about the original Metroid is that Samus's backstory was mysterious. Oh, so we have Dark Pirates here. So obviously the Dark Pirates, being dark and being possessed by the Ying, are susceptible to the light beam. And if we charge up a beacon and they're caught in the radius of its light, Reb Gary is arguing that the mana is canon. I don't give a shit. All right, it's the same canon that puts the Metroid Prime trilogy in the wrong spot and says that Other M is canon. So, the mana not in my canon, my friend. I'm sorry, I only consider the games. And like I said, in the original game, a big thing is made in the instruction manual for the original NES game about how Samus's background is completely unknown to anybody, and even to the point where even her gender was unknown. She's listed in the instruction manual as a he, and it is only discovered that he's a she when you beat the game, if you beat it efficiently. So the implication is that even the citizens of the Galactic Federation do not know that Samus is a woman to begin with. Um, Metroid Prime or Metroid 2: The Return of Samus also describes the artifactor statues merely as the relics of an ancient civilization that was native to, and also talks about these weird ancient ruins on the planet SR388, and does not go any further in discussing the history. It was only in the third game, the Super Metroid, that the Chozo were finally named. Um, because the statues were described as Chozo statues, and then it was the manga that came out after that point that I think it came out after that. I think it either came out after it or concurrent with it. But it was the manga that said that Samus had been raised by the Chozo on the planet Zebes after her parents had been killed by space pirates, and she was trained by the Chozo to fight using the Chozo battle suit. Um, and because the Chozo had lived on Zebes and had lived on planet SR388, it made complete sense that they left artifacts there, that they had their artifacts there. Talon 4 in Metroid Prime 1 also turned out to be a Chozo planet. And so, therefore, once again, it made sense that they left the power-ups there. Or it sort of did until you start to question why the Chozo kept leaving copies of the same power-ups on all these planets. Um, yeah, Arthur H.S., there was a Japanese manga that filled in the backstory of Samus Um, so let's see. Let's see if I remember it. So Samus was a kid on a mining colony called K2L, which produced like fluorite crystal or something. The space pirates came to planet K2L and killed everybody on the planet, including Samus's parents, except for Samus herself. Samus's mother died protecting Samus from Ridley, and Ridley cast Avada Kedavra on her, leaving a lightning bolt scar on her forehead, so that she would be the chosen one who would eventually come back to Zebes and defeat the space pirates, and then go to planet SR 388. Um, yeah, Rebgar, I don't know. So, so yeah. Now, Prime 1, as Reb Gary is pointing out, because sort of getting ahead of me here, but Prime 1 did explain in the lore why power-ups were left on Talon 4 for Samus, and that was because they had foreseen that Samus would come and rescue the planet from the Great Worm, the Phazon, Metroid Prime, Space Pirate, bullshit, everything. Samus is the chosen one. Okay? But the interesting thing is that I've always felt that from Samus the change of Samus from like mysterious hero, sort of like the samurai slash cowboy, rides into town because she's a bounty hunter. She's essentially lawless, and you can watch what's going on the screen. You can tell I returned the planetary energy, and now Umas is happy. Yeah, I have the planetary energy. Yay. But so Samus was sort of that cowboy figure. There's the sort of, the mysterious white hat who rode into town, saved town, and then rode out again for her own reasons and didn't need any more backstory than that. She was just that sort of badass hero. She became a chosen one figure. The hero with the tragic backstory who everything in her life became about completing the arc that was established by her tragic backstory. Ridley went from just another space pirate to her arch nemesis who had murdered her parents in front of her. Um, you know, it's sort of yeah, Mad Adventure saying blew up town. Yes, agreed. Samus has destroyed numerous ecosystems and planets. But it sort of represents sort of a shift in the cultural idea of what we want from our heroes. It was very much Metroid, the first Metroid was 86. And although it was developed in Japan, Metroid is one of those series that has actually always that actually has done much better in America than it did in Japan. Whoops, I thought I killed you. So by the way, now with the light beam, I can get in here. Whoops. And kind of overshot that. Okay, so I shouldn't be doing this with the bomb jump, because in the original game you had to actually do it with the double jump, and I don't quite have the timing down anymore because I've gotten so used to doing this with the Wiimote. Yeah, I've never been good at the double bomb jump thing. But like I said, it does sort of represent a shift in the way in sort of the culture of hero stories. And even in America. So, energy tank. And again, I assume you can see what I'm doing on screen. I'm still talking about the series, but I don't need to describe it. Now, hidden in this room, there's an energy tank. We know how the game works. And honestly, that was one of the things that I didn't really care for in Prime was the first game in the series that made a thing about Samus being the chosen one, because all the Chozo lore was about the newborn and and her destiny and all of the pirate lore was about Samus, the hated enemy, Samus, the arch nemesis, instead of Samus, just yet another bounty hunter. In point of fact, in the original Metroid, Samus was one of a group of bounty hunters. She was the most successful, but the Galactic Federation, in order to combat the space pirate menace, they formed a group of bounty hunters called the Space Hunters. And that was originally going to be the title of Metroid, was going to be Space Hunter. Um, Salmello is pointing out that you see the same shift in comic book heroes and villains. Most of Spider-Man's villains were originally just random criminals, but recent adaptations always give them backstories that tie into Peter's. Yeah, and like, even if you look at like how the Spider-Man origin story changed, like in the Amazing Spider-Man, or in the Michael Bay version of the Ninja Turtles movie. Um, in the Michael Bay version of the Ninja Turtles movie, they were suddenly the backstory of April and the backstory of the Turtles and the backstory of Shredder were all much more tightly interconnected, so that April was sort of destined to be their friend, and the whole plot had this whole undercurrent of destiny behind it. You know, Metroid Other M makes a big to do about the rival, the arch nemesis relationship between Samus and, oh, that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go forward. Yeah, and like, and I came through here just so that we could find this other key bearer for now. Um, and right now we're still just gathering the information from the key bearers. We're going to learn what it's all about. Um, basically, basically, as you've probably noticed from this point, each of the key bearers that we've encountered mentions a specific location as the place where they made their final stand against the Ing. And those locations are going to be important. And if you remember how Metroid Prime ended, you can probably guess what's coming from that. Yeah, it's Mad Adventure is saying that heroes and villains now, it's all got to be very personal between the hero and villain. You can't have just random villains. They've got to be tied to the hero in some way, or some reflection of the hero. I mean, Dark Knight Rises, or Dark Knight, the one with the Heath Joker, was basically all about how the Joker was basically trying to be Batman's dark reflection. He couldn't just be a psychotic criminal. Yeah, and I know some of the darker comic stories have also done that, but it became much more pronounced there, where it was this psychological war between the hero and his antithesis. And we just have no room anymore for sort of the cowboy mercenary hero types, which, yeah, you know what? I'm old fashioned. I kind of liked it better when Samus was just that mysterious, the mysterious space cowboy. And Arthur H. is saying I respect the fact that they try to inject more pathos into the story. And yeah, I'm fine with that. But you know what? You can have you can have pathos without every hero being a chosen hero. You know? It doesn't have to, like, you don't have to be the chosen one just to choose to do the right thing against all odds and to pay great costs to do what is good. You know? In fact, I think in some ways it sort of almost cheapens a hero when all the stories and all the villains are like personal. I like the idea that Batman is going out and fighting crime because it's the right thing to do, because, crime is evil and he believes it needs to be stopped, and that it doesn't matter that crime is going after him personally, or that or that he created the crime personally, that he created, he turned Jack Napier into the Joker, or that um or that ultimately the Joker wants to destroy Batman. That it's all that sort of personal stuff going on. You know. By the way, now that we're finished in Aegon, we're heading back to the central. We're heading back to the central hub. That is the Sky Temple grounds. I mean, it is very interesting to look at, for some of these long running franchises, to look at the different interpretations of the characters and the ways they evolve, especially when different creators. I gotta lower the volume on this for myself for a second. There. Especially when different creators become involved in the franchise. Prime is a really interesting example, and actually, Prime 1, I think now, yep, these are Dark Splinters. Prime 1 and Fusion were very interesting to look at side by side because they were developed at exactly the same time. One was developed in Japan Fusion was developed in Japan by the Metroid team, and Prime 1 was developed in America by an American studio with some heavy influence from Japan, but it's still interesting to see the directions that they went, how they went in different ways with it. Especially because in Prime 2, where the hell am I going? Okay, so let's get back to talking about this game a little bit instead of pontificating about story and stuff. So at this point, once you've finished an area, the next step is you return to Sky, what the game wants you to do. Because we're going to talk a little bit about sequence breaking too. Because sequence breaking is sort of an interesting anomaly in critical path design and stuff. So, actually now with the light beam, we can charge these weird crystals, which makes these statues move. And behind this one, we actually find a Dark World portal. And what the hell? Let's pop through and see what's on the other side. So the way the game wants you to play it is you go in, you get the dark energy, or you get the energy from the Dark Temple, bring it back to the Light Temple, then return to Umas and get your next set of instructions. Okay. And here, while we're here in the Dark World, we see those purple doors. We don't know how we can open them yet. But basically, the purple doors have these 5 energy points around them, and they have to be destroyed simultaneously. Okay. So like I said, this is another thing too. This blob is called ingworms. Okay. Ingworms are placed in spots that were doors in the light world. Ingworlds are blobs that are placed over doors in the light world to kind of help you understand where the sections of the game, where the missing parts of the game are, because like I said, not everything that is represented in the light world is also represented in the dark world. The dark world isn't a perfect mirror. So in order to kind of signal that the maps were different, they put these ingworms in the spots where there were rooms that they removed from the map. They didn't do it in every spot, but they did it in many of the spots. Did I just go back through the door I had just come through? Yeah, okay. So we're going to do what the game wants, but I'm also going to talk about how you can break it. Because it turns out that to reach the next area of the game, that is, the next area, the next temple, all you really need is the translator file that you get when you scan the Light Temple initially on your first arrival at the Light Temple. So the fact that when we first got to the Light Temple, we learned how to speak Amber. And Amber is actually... The Amber language file is all we need to open the door to the next area. Of course, in order to survive there, the creators, because they realized that you could do that, they created the ing claws, and they created some long sections of Dark World with no portal, so that it would be very difficult to survive without... Yeah, see, there's the amber door that will let me move on to the next area. Because this is what they want me to do. They want me to return to this hub. They want me to go back and talk to UMass, and then take the next translator door. But you can actually skip that. We can skip, like, you can skip the conversation with UMass if you want to, but, I'm here anyway. But even then, even with the enhanced damage that you take due to the ing claws, you can actually get pretty deep into Torvus Bog, which is the next area, without the dark suit. So you can do it without beating the boss and restoring the light energy. And it sort of shows, like, the Metroid games have become sort of famous, particularly among speedrunners, because you can read the text. He's just saying, hey, thanks. And now you want to go to the next area and do it all again. So sequence breaking refers to skipping elements of the game that the creators intended for you to go through, by exploiting either your own skills or glitches in the game, to do things out of order or even skip things entirely. And the Metroid games, because they have this sort of open world design, and because they are ostensibly about free exploration, even though they are designed around these very carefully crafted critical paths, they're sort of ripe for sequence breaking. And once you sort of master the game, you go back and you challenge yourself and say, well, you know what? What's the minimum amount of stuff I could do? Or can I do this out of order? Or can I get to this area without this power-up? Which ultimately leads to, like, sequence breaking speed runs, and so on and so forth. And there's sort of this kind of funny thing, because on the one hand, the fans, like, okay, if you don't try to sequence break the game, generally speaking, you will not accidentally sequence break Metroid very much. The game is... The rails that the game has created, however subtle or overt they may be, are sort of difficult to wander off by accident. Which is, that's just good game design there. But if you want to try and sequence break the game, you can find the ways to do it, which gives the game, replay value. It gives fans a different way to engage with the game. It lets you keep replaying the game and discovering new ways to play it. So from that standpoint, sequence breaking is actually positive, especially in a game that is built around exploration and finding your way through and challenging yourself and empowering yourself through exploration. Ultimately, sequence breaking is the ultimate example of empowerment through exploration. You have gotten to know the game so well, as a game, that you can break off the rails that it puts down. And yet, creators of the game work very hard to sort of shut down sequence breaking. Okay, and there's a simple example of that design is what I was just talking about, where Retro realized that you could skip a large section of Aegon Wastes and not get a crucial power up and get to the next area of the game. So they created these segments that would be particularly difficult to do without those power ups. Fusion very famously locked down a lot of the sequence breaking, and then when they discovered that there was a spot that could still be sequence broken, that is, you could skip and get to a place you weren't supposed to get to, the creators of the game actually hit a message that would basically amounted to, hey, good job, you broke the sequence of the game, but we're not letting you go any further, the door is locked, so head back the way you go and play it properly. Which is sort of a weird tactic to take if you view sequence breaking as essentially a positive form of, replay and engagement. And we're coming up on that section, by the way, where it's very hard to get through without the dark suit in just a moment. I need more dark ammo than light ammo, so... But the real thing is, so you might ask yourself, why fight against sequence breaking? Why not just allow it? And there's a couple of reasons why fighting against sequence breaking is actually a good thing for the game. Maybe not locking it down to an Orwellian degree, but the first thing that trying to lock down sequence breaking does is it prevents the casual... Whoops, I'm trying to empower a dark portal with the light beam. That's not going to work. It does prevent the casual player from accidentally sequence breaking in a way that they can't handle. That is, they get off the critical path and then they end up lost or unable to defeat a particular challenge. The other thing it does is that it makes sequence breaking all the more challenging. If the creators do their very best to lock down all the sequence breaking becomes more difficult, but it's never going to be impossible. They're never going to stop it 100%. And one of the interesting things Fusion did do was they gave sort of an alternative to the sequence breaking. I don't know why I'm fighting you guys. I don't have to. Because what we're going to do is we're going to move on. Okay, so we see here, now we have this really long hallway. Basically, this area is a long hallway with no energy beacons, and the ing claws are poisoning the atmosphere. So without the dark suit, we would be dying very quickly here. And this is what prevents us from coming this way without the dark suit. Or in theory. Because in practice, you can still do it. Alright, so here we have the not ions, which are what? Dark Isling? I didn't even catch the name. Oh, corrupted sentries. As opposed to the naturally occurring laser defense grid of the ions in Metroid Prime. And so now as we get to this spot, we hit a dead end. And we can't go any further forward as evidenced by the ing worms. I didn't really talk about the design of this segment, and now I'll have to get back to the light world. Okay. I really should, because it's an interestingly designed segment. So let me pull up my map here. Okay. So in the light world, we have this situation now where we don't have the artifact needed to open green doors. And as we came out of the temple, following Umas's directions through the amber door, we find ourselves locked off in this section where we can't go this way because of a green door, and we can't go this way because of a green door. We're basically trapped between the green doors. So using the portal, which, by the way, again, at one end it's blocked by a green door, and at the other end we have to go all the way through this hallway, and then you're going to see we're going to go all the way back. We can use those portals to switch back and basically skip around that green door. Rep Gary is saying you're pretty good with the words. I came here expecting raging. Yeah, I know the angry GM thing. If you don't follow me on Twitter and you don't know my shtick from role playing games, um, yeah, actually even then, I'm very oh yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I'm very into critical game design analysis. I like to really think solid through a game. So here we have a neat little puzzle, which involves these 4 bomb slots. And when we activate a bomb slot, it drops a claw. Our goal is to drop all the claws, but each of the bomb slots also drops a wall. So we have to figure out the proper sequence to, based on where the walls are, to drop all 4 claws to activate the transit system. And I didn't do the scans. The scans will say, oh, hey, this is a transit system. When all 4 claws are in place, it'll go. But you can see basically the solution is this. And the only thing the one problem with puzzles, because this game gets very puzzly, but one of the things that works against the puzzles in this game is that, half the puzzles, by their nature, occur in the dark world. And everything you do in the dark world has sort of this implied time limit on it. So you don't... Like, while we're sitting here trying to figure out how to drop these claws in the right sequence to activate the little elevator, our health is draining away. And then these night barbs come flying at us as the elevator goes... blah. So now we have a little... I don't need to be wasting my dark beam on this. Though part of it, too, is that the night barbs actually very helpfully refill your health. Like, if you keep hammering away at them, they do very little damage to you, but they drop a lot of health pickups. So it sort of helps refill your health, because you did do that long run through the dark world, and you did have to solve a puzzle at the end, and conceivably you could be very low on health. And the game is not going to give us a save point right away. We still have a little walk to go. So, and this is an area that would be kind of annoying to replay. You had to do this long walk. You had to solve this puzzle. The last time you saved was back in the Sky Temple. Oh, so again, we have this opportunity to kill the space pirates before they turn. Now here I'm going to point out, even though the dark space pirates are vulnerable to the light beam because they're dark, the dark beam is actually very effective against them, because you can freeze them in place and destroy them with one... I thought you could just... I'm lying to you. It takes several missiles to destroy them. I lied. I am a terrible person. I could have sworn you could destroy them with one missile. So now you can see here, we popped out of the light world on the other side of the impassable green door. And it's actually really interesting that the green doors are such an issue here. Okay? The fact that we basically had to do all of these sort of trans-dimensional gymnastics. Oh, and here's another green door. Just to get around the green doors is the game designers doing something very clever. Whoops, and here, we've got to move this little statue here. Because what's going to happen is, in short order, we're going to get the solution to the green door problem, which is the super missile. And when we find the super missile, the next step in the sequence is actually to leave the area we're in and come back to this region to get the next pickup. So it's kind of important. Reb Gary is calling me a filthy liar. Yeah, about the missile thing? Yeah, sorry. So it's kind of important that we remember all of these green doors were here. which is why they wanted us to work so hard to get around them, to keep running into them as obstacles, and then to have to circumvent them, to spot other ones, so that as soon as we get the solution to the green door, this area is a place that we think of right away. Otherwise, we'll end up flailing around for a while, not knowing where to go next. It's sort of a callback to one of the things Super Metroid did where with the speed booster, which I talked about in my playthrough of Super Metroid, where you end up locked in this space if you try to move too far by these two doors that drop, and you have to search for a way out, and in doing that, it makes that place very memorable to you, so that when you get the speed booster, you go back to that spot, and then you get past those two gates. It's sort of a way of emphasizing it. Basically, in a game like this where you're relying on people to figure out the path you want them to follow, a lot of it involves you trying to find ways to underline, asterisk, and bullet point the important segments that you want them to remember later. And like I said, the other thing too with that sequence, I think I mentioned the night barbs drop a lot of health pickups, and the reason for that is to make it less likely that you'll die and have to replay that long sequence. Which again, it just shows savvy game design. You know. The other thing too is that it's actually interesting that the game. Interesting. I use the word interesting to preface just about anything I want to comment on, but it's actually neat that the game does not. It starts you out where the dark world is basically crippling, and it forces you to go through a lot of the dark world before you get the power up that protects you from it. Like, some people have compared it to the Varia suit in Super Metroid, where there are or in Metroid Prime, where there are superheated areas that will damage you until you get the Varia suit that provides you some thermal protection, or protection against the extreme temperature. And these hanging pods are basically sky-mounted crates. Though I have, honestly, I say that, and the scan says that, but I don't think I've ever had them drop anything for me. I'm not convinced they actually have items in them anymore. And now we enter the second area of the game, Torvus Bog. Which, honestly, not one of the most popular areas of the game, but I gotta say, to be fair, I really do dig it. I like the design of this area a lot. And this area, one of the interesting things about this area is that it's actually two areas in one. Yeah, I know, I'm using the wrong beam on you guys. Light World, use the dark beam. We also find another key bearer Sidley, whatever. Oh, Reb Gary is saying that the sky crates do drop shit. Okay, good to know. Here we have another key bearer, blah blah blah. The Ing came after me and dispatched me here in this lagoon. So a lot of game design when it comes down to the critical path is learning how to emphasize certain places and make sure that people are noticing the things you need them to notice. We talked about that in Dark Souls too. I think I've talked numerous times about how the lighting in Dark Souls is used to underline particular game elements that the game wants you to notice. I think I blew up all the crates without scanning any of those Torvus blob things. Those are actually the Torvus crates. One of the just delightful things about them is that they I'll scan one here. When you burst them open, apart from dropping items, they also drop a cloud of poison, which would be a lot. So if we walk too close to that cloud, we take It disperses pretty quickly. But if you walk into that cloud, you do take a little bit of damage. Which would be a bigger issue if your charge beam didn't draw in the pickups. Reb Gary is talking about the music in Torvus Bog. Yeah, the music here is excellent. In general, the Metroid Prime series has really awesome music. So, so now here we are in Torvus Bog, and I was talking. Oh, I was talking about how the dark suit, they sort of force you to endure for a long time before you get the dark suit, so that you appreciate it when you get it. You know, if you had to make one little run through the dark world, and then it's like, okay, you made your one little run through the dark world, and now have your dark suit, it wouldn't feel as substantial of a power up. And that's really important because, once again, they really wanted to make this game about Samus adapting to a very hostile alien environment. And if you don't feel that the adaptation is substantial, then you don't get that sort of theme. So they had to really hammer home how bad the Dark World was by making you literally go through hell before they give you a way to avoid it. And now Torvus Bog is going to kind of do the same thing to us, because we're in one of Samus's classical nemeses now, water. Yeah, and there's the oh, this isn't a creature scan. So as we note, underwater, as it was in Prime, our visibility is drastically reduced. Our jumping ability is shot to hell. And we move like molasses in January. It sucks. And again, Prime kind of didn't make us work through water that much before we got the gravity suit upgrade that circumvented the negative effects of water. And even Super Metroid, it exposed you to area in a few spots. By the way, these hidlings that keep popping up, these little creatures, these trivial little monsters that come in huge clumps, have a high drop rate, and die in one hit. This is an old trick that Metroid does to give you power-ups without giving you power-ups. Even going back to Metroid 1, there were these little enemy spawning platforms in the ground that would spawn enemies, and when you killed the enemies, they would drop health and missile pickups. And then, so you could just blast them and refill yourself. So that's the same thing that those things exist for. And we're going to find that the placement of those things is actually pretty substantial when the game thinks we might be needing more ammo. Because notice everything that we just went through, we haven't really had a good we haven't run into an ammo station. So we haven't had a chance to refill our ammo since pretty much Aegon. And we did make that long journey to get here into Torvus. So at this point, the creators figure, they might be a little bit low on ammo. So rather than just, having a shit ton of crates, because you would need a shit ton of crates, we'll have these clouds of these little insubstantial enemies that they can blast through. The other thing is that as we come into this new area, we're finding that there's a lot of indicators of other paths we could take that are kind of closed off to us at this point. Due to translator doors, limited jumping ability, gates that are closed over doors so that we can't access the doors yet. So we find ourselves basically being railroaded. And I think if we go this way... Yeah, Reb Gary is saying ammo stations really only appear on Dark Ether. And you know what? I never noticed that. Oh, here we have another green door we can't access. Gosh, I sure hope we find a way to get through those green doors sometime soon. So yeah, now we hit another dead end. So we're being railroaded again. Which, honestly, it's a side effect of sort of the, the chunky gameplay of this, where the game is divided into chunks of exploration. You know, go to Aegon, explore it completely. Go to Torvis, explore it completely. Go to Sanctuary, explore it completely. You know, play the game in chunks. Oh, I didn't even talk about this. This is actually one of the neater things. This is a room that is only accessible by portal. There's a power up right there. There's a portal right there. We can't get at them until we can come in from the other universe. We have to sneak into that power up from another dimension. But now we find ourselves on the other side of that bridge we came into. Reb Gary's... Oh, by the way, on ammo stations, your ship, though, does replenish ammo. So, which is actually kind of interesting because the path to Torvis does what we're gonna find later on, that the path to Torvis actually starts where you landed your ship. By going through the temple, we skipped that spot, but they could very easily have funneled us past Samus's ship to get a complete refill before we came to this area, and yet they didn't. Fuck it. I can just take the damage. Pfft. So it was kind of an interesting choice that they blocked us off from the ship. But so as I said, basically the way the game is played in chunks of exploration means that now we're sort of reset back to a baseline. Okay? And we're going to find that pattern a lot where we enter a new area and there are very few paths open to us and we gradually have to open them up. These are the Grenchlers, by the way. The Grenchlers are only vulnerable in their butt. You have to blast off their butt shell, but they are extremely vulnerable to the dark beam, so that you can freeze them and then just keep blasting them while they're frozen. Once they stop flashing red, by the way, they are dead, even though they won't die. Oh, no. Damn it. The game is making me a liar again. Another weird thing are these plant forms. The bloat sacks. And we've now discovered all of the... We've now discovered all the plants in the game. As you can see, we're 100% on plant forms. These are indestructible for whatever reason. Unlike all of the other plants in the game, which are basically just containers. Oh yeah, Reb Gary is saying they're swamp Sheegoths. And yeah, they basically have exactly the same attack pattern and weaknesses as the Sheegoths from Prime. Basically, they will vomit projectiles at you, they will ram you, and you got to hit them in the butt. But then when you have a strafing and side dodging mechanic, you know, that's going to be sort of de rigueur. So right now, we've sort of been reset back to the beginning of exploration, where there are all these inaccessible paths and we're being railroaded along. And then as we explore more and more of Torvis Bog, we'll find that, you know, more and more of the path is open to us. So in that respect, there's sort of a bit more of a push and pull, like a manageable pace to the exploration. Okay, and we have another green door. And the reason why we did that, by the way, that's another one of those bomb slots that exists in both universes. And by doing it here, we have we have moved the bridge in the other world too. So these are the swamp Flogoths, Flogus or whatever. Flip them or shoot them, and they become a platform with a safe zone in the middle. And there's a yellow door we can't get through. So it looks like our only option is just to go right back to the light world and go wherever that bridge was going to take us. All aboard the Critical Path Railroad. And you know what? I say that, but I'm not really disparaging it because, once again, it is clever game design. Because it does, like I said, it means that the exploration has a sort of cadence to it, a rhythm of rising and falling, of railroading to freedom, to railroading to freedom, to railroading to freedom, and back and forth. It's good pacing. Now we get introduced to the friggin' pirate commandos. Okay. So, pirate commandos... these are Darkling possessed pirate commandos. So these are the Dark Pirate Commandos. Okay. They can phase in and out of reality. They throw these EMP grenades that disrupt your visor, which, personally, I find is pretty cool. I like when the game plays with the visors. And I think I talked about the Bughead story last time, so I won't repeat that. But again, if... Like, your instinct is not to use the Dark Beam, but again, it does freeze them in place. So if I can find where that guy teleported to, because I froze him as he was teleporting out. If you freeze him as he's teleporting out, when he reappears on the other side, he will be frozen. I'm not sure if I nailed that guy. The other interesting thing about the Dark Pirate Commandos, which is sort of inexplicable, is that after a little while fighting you, they get bored and leave. Okay, which you can tell because the music then returns to normal. So those Dark Pirates, I didn't beat them fast enough, and they got bored of me. And Reb Gary is pointing out that they basically have the similar mechanics to the Chozo Ghosts. Yep. Good job getting this far. Have a missile pack. I love that missile pack. I don't know why it's there. I think they realized that they were like one missile pack short. That they had forgot to put the last missile pack in the game. And they were like, well, just put it anywhere. And I can actually scan a creature through this wall here to get a good scan on it. Oh, he's the last predator on Light Ether. So that is the Sporb. And the Sporb is sort of, like, you can see him there in the foreground. He's sort of a grapple monster where they're basically placed in spots where you're going to be in the morph ball. So that they can try to grab you in morph ball form. Oh yeah, I did. I can't get up there yet. But this is the door that I wanted. And now this door will restore power to the kinetic orb cannon. Which I still think is like the stupidest traversal system ever. Especially for a speed... Well, I can't say that... I don't know that the Luminoth used it for travel. I realize that's what we're using it for. Because unlike the Chozo, the Luminoth could not roll up into little balls. And they were not obsessed with little ball technology. Oh. Alright, Shriek Bats are light. Nah, that was easier. Alright, so and now ultimately, this whole run has been... And I'm going to skip grabbing the pickup just yet. I'm going to grab it on the way out. Oh, actually, it doesn't matter. Okay, so scanning around, you can hear the pickup noise. And if you scan around, you see this one panel is composed of telluric alloy. And here's another energy tank. And again, what's really funny is that the energy tanks in this game are pretty easy to find. And you have to jump through some... You have to jump through some pretty ridiculous hoops for a lot of the missile pickups. And part of the reason for that is because, again, with the dark ether mechanic, it's important that you are able to keep increasing your health. They didn't want you to miss too many of the energy pickups. You know, whereas missile pickups, you have you have so many different offensive capabilities that, you know, missing the missile pickups is not a big deal. Now, ultimately, again, our goal is to get to the Torvis temple, or to get to the temple at the center of the new region we're in. Same pattern that we encountered in Aegon. Arrive in the area, go to the light temple, go back and forth between the light world and the dark world, picking up power-ups until you find the 3 dark world keys. Go to the dark world temple, fight a boss, get the energy. Yeah, Rip Gary is saying it's to transport small stuff. Yeah, who cares? Like I said, it's an excuse. It's one of those things that I call because gameplay. But like I said, the stuff, a lot of the technology gets gradually sillier. Though one of the neat things is, whoops, I ran out of morph ball or dark energy. One of the neat things about this game is a lot of the morph ball tunnels have a sort of organic and burrowed look to them. They look like parasitic creatures have been digging them. Which is kind of neat. It's definitely better than some of the previous Metroid games where, yeah, there's just all these 1 meter wide tunnels. The most glaring one is on the Space Pirate Frigate in Metroid Prime. The navigation room has only one entrance, and it's through a 1 meter wide crawl space. There are literally no other doors into the room. Hey, look at that. We got a super missile. And the super missile is kind of a weird outlier in this game, because it is actually not. I guess it kind of makes sense now that I think about it. What I was going to say is all of Samus's other Chozo power-ups were stolen from her by the Ing. And in order to retrieve them, she has to defeat a Guardian Ing that has it. And then this is of course the door into the Torvis Bog Temple. Notice the highlights are in green now, and we've been encountering a lot of green translation doors. So, but anyway, what was I saying? So the super missile is kind of weird in that it's one of Samus's power-ups, but you don't have to get it back from the Ing. It's just sitting there on the ground. But then I realized that the same was true of the missile launcher, and both the missile launcher and the super missile could be seen as normal ordnance. In fact, I don't know why I scanned that first. In fact, the missile launcher was specifically ordnance that was looted from the Galactic Marines back at the beginning. So it's conceivable that there could be a super missile that Samus's suit just incorporated into itself. So now we find the priest or the defender of the Torvis Bog Temple. He is also green, and he's going to teach us to speak green. He was Avok, the last sentinel of this temple. As you can see, this temple has been crippled by the ravages of war. While the main chamber has been mostly preserved, the remainder of this temple has been flooded. Yeah. You must use your ability to venture to these flooded areas and find the keys you need to enter the Dark Temple. I've updated your translator module. You can access devices and doors coded with emerald holograms. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I was referring to it as the green, but it's actually the emerald. Remember, in the Luminoth in the Luminoth spectrum, we have amber, cobalt, emerald, and crimson are the names of the colors. Yeah, so this is the energy controller. Is this the one where? Yeah, energy controller, including a weather control grid, teleportation system. Oh yeah, and see that talks about how. Oh, okay. So the menu system, by the way. So this is how the menu system works. Is it's got these sort of rotating little arm things, and you navigate through them to find specific elements. It's kind of neat, but a little bit like I don't know. I guess it's kind of neat as sort of holographic 3D virtual technology would go, but ultimately it seems sort of unnecessarily complicated to navigate through. So now they're talking about the okay. So this is after the asteroid. Um, Objects went into dimensional flux. This is how they were gradually discovering that there was another ether. That at this point, though, like we've already pretty much discussed all of the history of the planet Ether. Um, I think I also lied too because I think there's one more place we go before we head back to all those green doors. And that's because there was a green door right here. Yeah, so now that we have the oh yeah, now that we have the green translator, we can actually use this elevator. But before we do that, we're going to head back and grab one other thing because there's another translation door nearby. So we can now get through this translation door. And this, if I remember correctly, this is going to be the map station. Yeah, okay. Which is the same thing, by the way, that Aegon did. Right after you get the translation file, there is an easily accessible translation door that you pass on your way in that gives you the map for the area. So now we have the map for Torvis, and if we look at it like this, you might not notice it, but Torvis is actually divided between two different areas. There is an above and a below. This is the temple, the flooded temple to which or whatever the hell the Aegon's name was, or the Luminoth's name was. And now that elevator in the main temple that we can now access thanks to the translator brings us to the other side of this green door. Whoops. So as I walk in here, the elevator is going to descend because the elevators will descend to the same height you're at. And by following that elevator, so pretend we didn't go back and get the map, well, and had gotten it later. We would find ourselves down here with another translation door. Nameless PC. Oh, hey, Nameless PC. We have another one of these mysterious purple doors. Can't go in there yet. We have this passage because we're explorers and we want to be contrary. So we're going to not explore the obvious direction that the game wants us to go in. And instead we're going to check out what's behind this door. We find a couple of dead Luminoths. And we also find the elevator down to the lower section of Torvis. And if we go down there right now, we're going to find that we can't proceed very far. I'm just going to ask you to trust me on that front, rather than me wasting time on the stream doing that. And now we're going to get back on the critical path, and we're going to go through this green door. Or the green translation door, not the green super missile door. By the way, the super missile works the same way that it did in Prime. Charge up a charge beam shot. Charge up a charge beam shot, and then unleash a missile. It'll cost you 5 missiles, and it will basically give you a much more powerful missile shot. This guy is kind of a pain in the ass to fight here because you don't really have enough space to get around him. But whatevs. And now we also encounter a Sporb that is not... Like, if we... Like, because we roll out of that Morph Ball tunnel. So if we hadn't immediately popped out of Morph Ball and had kept going in Morph Ball, the Sporbs would be trying to grab us. Otherwise, the Sporbs are invulnerable when their leaves are closed. And we have another piece of lore. Documenting the first attack from the Ing, from the Dark World on the Light World. The day came when space was torn asunder, revealing dimensional rifts to a dark place. Horrible dark swarms streaked forth from the rifts, engulfing nearby creatures and transforming them into what we would come to call the Darklings. The dark creatures became our enemies, and peace came to an end on Ether. So yeah, there's that. Again, like I said, at this point, this is all very well-trod ground for us. So this weird twisted tree has been weakened by exposure to radiation, and it has densium in it. We haven't yet learned how to deal with densium, but we don't have the power up yet to deal with it. We also see these Phazon canisters. And Phazon canister, where there is Phazon, there are space pirates. I think this is the introduction of the light... Yeah, this is the introduction of the pirate commandos. These are the light versions of the dark pirate commandos. And I honestly think that there was a little bit of a screw-up because they introduced you fight the dark pirate commandos before you meet the light pirate commandos. Oh, and their shield just sort of blocks super missiles too, huh? But they do not like dark beam, because they are creatures of the light. The space pirates are creatures of the light. And I'm going to replenish some of my dark beam ammo here. I think what we have next is a boss fight. A mini boss fight. And I think what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go through the next mini boss fight, save the game, and then I'm going to call it a night here, because it's been a little over 2 hours now. But I do thank everyone for hanging out. It's actually a really neat... It's a really neat, if somewhat frustrating, mini-boss fight that sort of shows off, again, that they were getting a lot more creative with their boss fights in this game. It's sort of interesting because, you know, Metroid, for the fact that it has some pretty spectacular boss fights. It's not really, like, I guess it isn't really about, oh, this is the first time we encounter the Hunter Rings, and these things are a pain in the ass. Okay? So the Hunter Ring are basically these tentacled flying horrors. They phase in and out of reality. They surround themselves with this little shield. If you shoot them with the light beam at the wrong time, it does no damage, and they simply become insubstantial. Which can make them stop make them stop tentacling you, but what you really want to do is you want to wait until... Damn it. Oh, he just sort of blundered into the safe zone, so, that's his problem. Generally speaking, you want to wait until they are both tangible and unshielded to launch your fight, to launch your attack. But to be honest, I have always found it a little tough to get the timing down as to when to hit them. But anyway, like I was saying, Metroid is, as a series, even though it has some really good boss fights, it's never been a game that's about its boss fights. Okay, there are some games that you can definitely say are about the boss fights, where the boss fights are the main engagement, the main reason you're playing them. But Metroid's boss fights have more sort of been there because games need boss fights. And generally speaking, Metroid would probably be okay if it didn't have the boss fights. I mean, Super Metroid, if you really look at the Super Metroid boss fights for sort of the standard example, almost all of the Metroid boss fights were a matter of waiting for either a battle of attrition where you were just unloading as much ammo as possible, or avoid an attack, wait for a weak point to open, and then unload as much as you could on that weak point before it closed again. And I'm not disparaging that. I mean, they're good games, they're a lot of fun, but they're not what you would call about the boss fights. Okay, the boss fights existed just to exist. And I mean, the last boss fight in Super Metroid, once you get through Mother Brain's jar, the whole rest of the boss fight at that point is sort of a trivial scripted event. The boss fight against Ridley that the game has been building up toward is basically unload as much ammo as you can into Ridley. Alright, and so here we have it. Another Guardian. We also have another dead Luminoth, but he's not one of the key bearers. And a lot of the Ing lore that isn't about the key bearers is basically trying to tell us how badass how badass the Luminoth were and how they really went out fighting. Which I guess I kind of respect. We also might notice that our first Dark Temple key is up there. I also might notice that we're in a half pipe and that thing sped away from us in a ball shape that had sort of we're getting the boost ball, is what I'm saying. I don't want to give it away, but the game is sort of giving it away if you played the first one. Oh, also the creature's name is Boost Guardian. Oh, and it just tried to possess me. Alright. Now, the Boost Guardian fight is a really interesting fight because... first of all, as you're going to see, it's got a couple of different... I want to get the scan off on him first. It's got two different modes that we have to fight him in. And there is a puzzle element to it. Yeah, see, target can only be damaged in solid form. Find a way to keep it solid. This, by the way, is its solid form. And charged light beam actually does a hell of a lot of damage to it. After which it goes into this sort of boost mode and shoots around the arena. And the trick is, and then it goes into that sort of blob mode. And the trick is to drop bombs until you stun it enough that it resumes its normal form. And the game actually telegraphs that you should be using the boost ball by changing the camera angle. But as you can see, that the Boost Guardian does a hell of a lot of damage to you when he touches you. Okay, and now it automatically takes you out of ball mode to tell you, okay, now it's time for you to fight him like a boss again. The biggest element of challenge to this boss fight, apart from the fact that that the Boost Guardian does a hell of a lot of damage to you when he hits you in boost ball form, is that there are no safe areas in this game, so you are constantly taking damage in this fight. You are constantly taking damage from the Boost Guardian. And you are also in the Dark Worlds, so you're constantly taking damage from the Dark World, and he also does a lot of damage. So this fight is actually pretty difficult. One of the or two of the things that sort of counterbalance that are, number one, whenever the Boost Guardian hits one of those crystal pillars, it drops an Ultra Energy, which is 100 units of energy. And the other thing is that the Boost Guardian also keeps spawning these little inglets here. By the way, if you can manage to explode a bomb on the Boost Guardian while he's boosting around in ping pong ball mode, you can cause him to stop his little rush. The inglets that get spawned, by the way, are there to basically provide another source of pickups, particularly ammo. And what you find is that a lot of the boss fights in this game find ways to either drop ammo or spawn creatures so that you can get the ammo you need, that you can keep refueling yourself with ammo. All right, I've been taking way too much damage here. Yeah, my energy is really low. I might not survive this. Yeah. This might be the end of our hero league. There, see, I got a bomb off and interrupted its bouncing around. Yep, I didn't do it. All right. That's no problem. This is one of the tougher fights in the game, to be honest. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call it a night here. So if you want to see the death of the Boost Ball Guardian, you're gonna have to wait until next week. Meanwhile, I want to thank everybody for hanging out.